welcome back to the Drive Home Reviews podcast, where I review the movies that I have just seen as I'm driving home from the theater. And finally, we are at a film that I have actually been looking forward to. So if you're new here, you might not know, but I am a big fan of the Scream films. I've been a fan since the original back in '96. I have seen all of them and just love them, even the lesser entries into the series. And yeah, I've been very, very happy with the revival that started with Scream 5 and has proceeded now to this one. Sadly, though, I do feel like I have to champion this movie, which is a little depressing, because I've seen some of the other critiques around the internet, and they're not as positive as mine is going to end up being. I saw one, I think it was from the New York Times, that said it's time to ghost Ghostface. And I don't really think that's true. I do have to give them credit for the fact that they've kept this concept going and found new ways to come at it, because they had intended to stop with number 3. That was supposed to be the last one. And then, things happen, and here we are with number 7, and I'm almost positive that there'll be a number 8, because this one, despite negative reviews, apparently had the biggest opening weekend of any of the Scream movies, and that's at a time when people don't go to the movies that often. So that's rather impressive. So I'm almost positive we're going to get another one of these. And I kind of think that the Scream franchise has evolved to a point where it's very difficult to judge it by the criteria of others of its genre. When it's first coming out, yeah, you can judge it against other horror movies, but at this point, 7 movies in, you kind of have to start judging it just by the standards of its own film series. Kind of like, I don't believe you can really judge a James Bond movie against other action films. A Bond movie is a Bond movie, and there are certain rules that apply to a Bond movie. Same thing with the MCU. You can't really judge a Marvel movie against other big budget summer blockbusters or comic book movies. Marvel movies are Marvel movies, and you have to judge them by the rules of the Marvel films. And I think that Scream has kind of reached that point where I can't just judge it as just another horror film. I have to judge it by the rules of a Scream film.
There are certain rules that one must abide by.
And for me, part of the rules of a Scream film is, especially since they've started the, I don't know what you would call this, I guess the revival, starting with part 5 a few years ago, do they have a good reason to bring this back? I think that's the thing when you have a story like this, and every time it's a new killer, do you have a good reason to kind of revisit this? And yes, we do. I do think that they kept that fairly fresh. They kept the idea new, but still feels like it's very respectful to the original. So if you don't know the story this time, is that we are once again back with Sidney Prescott Evans now. Neve Campbell agreed to come back after sitting out Scream 7 due to issues, but is back, and now, ironically, she's back, and our 2 leads from the previous films are gone because of issues. So they kind of had to take a sharp turn, because the original directors who did the last 2 wanted to do a new trilogy, with our characters from the previous two, but with our new leads stepping down or being asked to step down, whichever version is going around. The directors didn't come back, and so now they kind of had to scramble and come up with a new idea for the seventh entry. And to bring Sidney back in, now they start looking at her family. We've known in the last couple films that she has gotten married, she has started a family, and so now we kind of see how this cycle is now coming back around. So at its heart, what makes this one really good is that it is a mother-daughter story. And the mother-daughter relationship was such an important one in the original, even though Sidney's mother was gone by the time the first one started. The fact that her mother was always kind of this ominous shadow, this thing that for one reason or another, or through one action or inaction, kind of started the whole Scream series going. So now to bring that back and start saying, well, now Sidney is a mother. Now she is the mother of a girl who is the same age that she was when the original series began, when the first events of Woodsboro kind of happened. It creates an interesting dynamic, especially as Sidney kind of has no frame of reference for how to deal with a teenage daughter, because she never got to have the mother-daughter relationship. And you can kind of see that playing on her, because she wants to have a close relationship with her daughter, played by Isabel May, but is also trying to keep her safe from her past. But the daughter is at an age where she wants to know about the past, especially when you're the child of a pseudo-celebrity. I'm sure you want to know what happened, but I'm sure for the parent, that's the last thing you want to share. So it creates a really interesting dynamic. And Neve Campbell and Isabel May work really well off each other. First of all, I just have to say, sorry for this, but it just does my heart good to see Neve Campbell back. I just adore Neve Campbell. Neve Campbell is one of my forever 90s crushes. You know, I'm a Party of Five slut. So, and I guess a 90s slasher movie slut, because Neve Campbell and Jennifer Love Hewitt are just like forever crushes. Takes me back to my carefree high school days. So seeing her back is just fantastic. And I like seeing where Sidney is, and I like seeing where Sidney has kind of come and this dealing with something she does know, and that is, surviving multiple serial killers, and dealing with something she doesn't know, the upbringing of a teenage daughter. It blends really well. Isabel May is the breakout of this. I think she does a fantastic job. I know she got a big push in that Yellowstone spinoff, but this is I think her first really big franchise role, and she knocks it out of the park. And what I liked about the relationship between Sidney and her daughter Tatum is that it felt real. I mentioned this in a previous review, that I sometimes feel like horror movies especially are guilty of just relying not just on stock characters, but stock relationships to generate false drama before everything comes down, and in a time when it doesn't really need it. But what I liked about the Sidney and Tatum relationship is that it felt like a genuine mother-daughter relationship. They had their stress, they had their strain, but you can see when something bad happened, she wanted her mom and still loved her mom and still listened. it felt like a genuine relationship. It wasn't just, you know what it wasn't? I hate to use this as an example because people love this movie, but it wasn't like Uncle Buck where the eldest daughter is just a complete and utter bitch the entire time at an unreasonable level. This felt like real natural kind of push and pull, and Neve Campbell and Isabel May worked fantastically together. You know who else is really good in this? Joel McHale. Who I love Joel McHale, but I remember him from like Talk Soup back on the E! Network. And I'm used to him in comedic roles. You know, I know a lot of people know him from Community and all that. So to see him kind of playing the father and a competent person in a crisis situation, he does a really good job. He's the kind of, as a longtime fan of the series, this is the guy you kind of wanted Sidney to end up with. You know, this person that, yeah, this is a good man and a loving person that is gonna be right for her. You know, that's just something very important. That is something. In between the last movie and this one, there was a book out that I highly recommend if you're fans of the Scream franchise. It's called What's Your Favorite Scary Movie? And it is a history of this franchise up to and including number 7 and starting with the production of this one. So it's a really good read. And it's one thing that the Kevin Williams, who makes his directorial debut, I believe, in feature films with this film. He's the creator of the original, creator of Dawson's Creek, creator of the 90s, essentially. Mentions is that they have a hard time with Sidney because they have to give Sidney a happy ending. Like they've all loved Sidney so much, and the fans love Sidney so much that they can't kill her because, or I guess maybe you could eventually, but like you have to give Sidney a happy ending. The fans won't accept it that she's going through all this and she has a bad end. You know, it just won't fly. So if you're in that predicament, how do you make the story interesting? And how do you make the story work? And they had a pretty interesting take on it this time. So I give a spoiler-free review for this one. I will put the spoiler warning up a little bit later. I'm not going to do it now, but I don't think this is spoiling it because everybody knows that Matthew Lillard is back in this one, and you know there have been the fan rumors for a long time about is Stu really alive and all of that, and they break this like 30 minutes in, you know, like not even through the first act they kind of drop this. So the big hook this time is that after the first killings, after our trademark opening kills, Sidney gets a Skype call from Stu, from Matthew Lillard, and saying that it's him and he's coming for her, he's going to ruin her family and all of this. And so this one has a different take. One of the selling points of the Scream movies is that they are whodunits. That's part of the charm of them, is that who is it? Who is the killer this time? And trying to figure it out from the suspects. But this one does it a little differently and says, we're telling you kind of at the top who it is, and the question is it really him? Is it really him, or is it a joke, or is it a trick, or is it an AI? You know, and that's kind of the driving mystery. And it's great to see Stu back. It's great to see Matthew Lillard. Matthew Lillard, especially after some comments by some, old men yelling at clouds, has kind of become one of those Hollywood starlets, kind of like Keanu Reeves, that you just feel is everybody's best friend. Everybody loves Matthew Lillard. Nobody says a bad word about Matthew Lillard. Nobody has a negative experience with Matthew Lillard. And so you just like, it just makes you happy to see Matthew Lillard, because you're like, yay, it's Matthew Lillard. And yeah, so it was good to see him back in this one. We're gonna talk about the rest of that and how it relates back to the mystery in a minute. As to the rest of it, it's fine. It's enjoyable. It's of course, you get all the kind of the mainstays back. Of course, Courtney Cox is back. We got Jasmine Save Brown and Mason Gooding from the previous two are back. Interesting, they don't say anything about the sisters from the previous film. They don't even give I mean, even when Sydney wasn't in the 6, they had a throwaway line of, yeah, I called Sydney and told her to, go into hiding or whatever. But yeah, nothing about that this time. That's I think that's a little spiteful, to be honest. But so a lot of our mainstays are back. It's fun. There's some other fun cameos I won't ruin. I will say one of the weaker parts of this one is I don't feel like the field of suspects is as wide or as interesting. None of them. There's the classic scene kind of halfway through when the Randy twins there. That sounds terrible to call them that, but the Randy twins gather everybody, all the suspects together, and it's sad that a lot of them you look at and you're like, I don't remember you being in the movie, and they don't really have distinguished personalities beyond suspect. It's very lackluster in terms of who are our suspects going to be. But I will say they do make it interesting in that part of the mystery, of who is it? Well, all the suspects start getting killed off pretty quick. The kills are a lot more creative this time out. Scream isn't really one of those like the Final Destination series where they try to come up with really creative kills. It's just usually stabbing. They really do they go a little bit Final Destination with some of this. It's hard to say who gets the best one. I can say McKenna Grace is definitely making her way through the franchises and gets a pretty memorable moment. There's another one involving a beer tap that me and my buddy who were seeing the film both laughed out loud at. And I think it was supposed to. I don't think it was one of those we're laughing at it because it was so stupid. It was stupid, but it's like, clearly it's supposed to be. Scream has always been a little bit of a wink and a nod, going all the way back to the original Tatum, Rose McGowan getting caught in a garage door. Those kind of, the Scream franchise has always had some of those kills that are just a little bit cartoony. But yeah. So I think it does a pretty good job on a lot of those fronts. The film is entertaining, the film's enjoyable. And I think if they had stuck the landing, then I would have ranked this one up there with 6 and 7 and maybe 2. But due to kind of how it ends up, I kind of have to put it down there with 3 and 4. Not bad, not terrible, and not unwatchable, but with missed opportunities. And for that, I have to put up the spoiler warning. So if you want to go in fresh, know that if you're a Scream fan, you're probably going to like it. It's a good movie. But yeah, it is kind of in the middle tier of them because of this last part. So, but to do that, I have to discuss motives. So, here we go. Spoiler warning is up.
Spoiler alert.
Spoiler alert.
Maybe say spoiler before you give away the end of a movie, okay?
Okay, so I'm not going to reveal the killer, but I am going to talk about the motive and the missed opportunity. So you go through all this trouble to bring Stu back and to create this mystery of is it really him or is it someone doing it? And if so, why would they bring Stu back after all this time? Why would they go through this elaborate setup? And the movie does a really good job of kind of making you question it. Is it really him? And I have to admit, knowing, again, I read the book, and even they were saying, no, that'd be stupid to bring Stu back after all this time because, you know, why would nobody know he's alive? How could nobody know he's alive? And, but I do also know that these people like to, you know, show you one thing and do another. So it's like, it would be just like them to write that out in a book and then do it. And also playing with the conventions of retcons and all this other stuff that are very popular now. It's not out of the realm of possibility that they would do it. But here's the thing that separates the Scream movies and why I always like them. There's always something to say about the culture that it exists in. That's, I think, one of the reasons why the Scream franchise has endured for as long as it has, because they have always been a commentary on the time in which they are being put out, the different generations, the issues, the problems. You know, the last couple have dealt with toxic fandom in various ways. And all right, so here's the spoiler. It is not Stu. It is, in fact, two people bringing him back to get to go to Sydney. And when you know that, like, the motive I thought they were going to go with was going to be a commentary on this kind of cult of personality that serial killers seem to have in our society due to, you know, true crime podcasts and documentaries and all of this, that. I mean, they even mentioned, like, Netflix documentaries and Inside Editions and all of these things, that this would be a commentary on that by having our killers be, like, obsessed with Stu and obsessed with the fact that he's always kind of played second fiddle to Billy, that everybody always knows Billy was the brains. And you think it's going to be these two people who are like, no, Stu deserves to be in the spotlight. He deserves to be the hero or the one getting the worship. So we're going to do all this in Stu's name. And that, to me, would have been a stronger motive than what they eventually went to, where it was a commentary on toxic fandom and serial killer worship, but from a different perspective, where the killer is actually obsessed with Sydney, that they read Sydney's book and, you know, took it to heart and misinterpreted it, and, you know, I'm going to be a survivor, and I'm going to be a survivor by, you know, killing this person and making a new Sydney because the old Sydney deserted me, and so now I'm doing all this so that her daughter will become the new Sydney, and, like, none of it really making a lot of sense. And I have to admit that I wasn't disappointed in the reveal of who the killers were, but I was heavily disappointed in the motive. And that's why I say this one kind of now ranks a little bit alongside number 3 for me, because that's another one where the motive and the background really didn't make sense. It really didn't. Within the established rules that the series had set up, it felt like it bent them to a point of breaking. And that's kind of the same way I feel about this one, especially. Now, in defense of 3, I don't know what I would have done either. You know, believe it or not, this was a series that was never meant to really have much of a continuation. It wasn't, the original was supposed to be a standalone kind of thing. I think everyone hoped it would have a sequel, but there was no guarantee of that back then. And so doing number 3, they were kind of scrambling and trying to figure out, okay, what do we do now? It wasn't a thing where they had the entire story mapped out in advance. They were just kind of playing it as they went. So I can understand why that one kind of ended up. And I think this one, as I've discussed, kind of suffered from the same problem, is that they had a series they were planning to do, but, you know, the treatment of the lead actors and all of that prevented that, so then they had to rewrite something new. So I can understand kind of how it happened, but I feel like you had a great opportunity there on the table. You're bringing Stu back after all this time, and you're bringing his ghost back, and you really don't do anything with it. There's no reason in the end, except to kind of annoy Sidney, that Stu's ghost was brought back for any of this. And in truth, as good as it is to see Matthew Lillard, he doesn't really do much. He doesn't really get a chance. We don't get a chance to learn more about Stu. We don't get a chance to really examine other facets of him or Sidney's relationship with him. As, you know, one of her, you know, the betrayal of her friend, of someone she cared about. We don't really get to explore any of that, and it's a wasted opportunity. And it really does feel like we brought him back just to say Matthew Lillard's back, to kind of get the focus off of why our previous stars weren't returning, and go, look, we have this shiny thing that everybody likes, pay attention to that. And it is really a thing that was, if you're going to bring Stu back, it was only going to work once. You can't do it again in part 8 and now try to go back and examine the relationship and all of that, or, you know, his influence on the serial killer fandom and all of that. It's done. You can't do it again. And that's a huge missed opportunity. And that's what pulls the movie down for me. Now, I want to be clear, as I've said before, it's still a good movie. It's still a fun movie. The Scream movies are still a lot of fun. I had a great time watching it. I'm looking forward to number 8. I also like that now there are multiple avenues, thanks to the previous 2 films. We've got the Billy sisters, who you can still bring them back. That happens all the time. People didn't think Nev Campbell was going to come back. People didn't think Natalie Portman would ever go back to the Marvel Cinematic Universe. People thought Bret Hart would never go back to the WWE, but he did. You know, money talks and bullshit walks. So they can come back. I do believe that. So you've got them, but now, due to this one, you now have Isabel May's character of Tatum, who can now kind of take up the torch and keep the family connection to Sidney going. So you have this 2 roads that could conceivably keep this franchise going for years. And as long as they keep being fun, they keep having something to say, I'll be there for them. It's when they don't have anything to say that they start to get flimsy. And again, this one had something to say, it just wasn't really the most interesting, or didn't take advantage of the opportunities that it had set up. So, again, I still enjoyed it. I don't think it was a bad movie. I think it was a little wasted in its opportunities, but all in all, it was a good time at the movies and another really fun Scream film. So, yeah, I liked it, and I'm interested to see where the franchise goes from here, because if there's one thing this franchise has proven is that it keeps coming back. Like a serial killer you don't shoot in the head. Oh, okay, that's one other thing. I almost forgot to talk about this. This is one thing that just kind of bugs me about the series since the first one. Nitpick time. And they do show Sydney. Sydney has gotten a lot stronger and has, she fights back a lot more. Not only is she proficient with guns, but you see her with some of the Ghostface attacks where she does kind of kick his ass. If you're Sidney Prescott at this stage, how are you not like a fucking black belt in every kind of hand-to-hand combat there is? How many times has someone come after you with a fucking knife? Like, if that was me after the fucking second time, I would be, I would, everything, karate, taekwondo, Krav Maga, judo. I'd go and do all of them and be like, any motherfucker comes at me with a knife next time. And how do you not put your kids into that? How do you not make sure your kids know how? I get that she's trying to give them a normal life, and I get that she's trying to kind of shield them from the past, but it's like, you have to know that this shit is going to happen at some point. Yeah, how do you not put your daughter in every motherfucking karate class there is? That's a nitpick. But it is just something, as I've watched all of these movies, I start to think, it's like, come on. Come on. Anyway, that was a side rant.
But I'm rambling. I'm sorry, it's my problem. I'll deal with it.
So, final grade for Scream 7. I'm giving it a B-. Still good. Very enjoyable. Had a great time watching it. Yeah, not as good as some of the recents. Nothing's as good as the first. So in there kind of with 3 and 4. Still good, still watchable. Not the best, but a good representative of the franchise that does some interesting things with the story. So I'm fascinated for what they do next. Where are they going to take the story? What's going to be the commentary next time? And yeah, so from a Scream fan, I'm sure other Scream fans will like it. So yeah, those are my thoughts. It was good to actually finally see a movie that I enjoyed, like without a lot of qualification, or ones that I enjoyed that I gave a decent review to, and then a couple of weeks later I'm like, what happened in that movie? So yeah, I'm happy about that. Maybe 2026 is going to pick up as far as the movies are concerned. We'll just have to wait and see. But we'll see together, and I look forward to going for you all to come along with me. So as always, thanks for joining me. Thanks for coming along. And as always, drive safe, and I will see you at the movies.